When we talk about Breaking Bad, the conversation, it almost always revolves around one man, Walter White. And it's often very easy to look at the guy standing on the other side of him, DEA Hank Schrader, and see him as the hero. On the surface, Hank fits the character perfectly. He's a cop fighting the bad guys while simultaneously being a family man, hosting backyard barbecues, and drinking his homemade brewed beer. But if you peel back the layers of Hank's character and take a close look at his actions, a very different, sinister picture starts to form. So, is Hank Schrader truly evil like Walter White? Let's take a look. Rudeness and decency, the human Hank. Alright, so for most of the series, Hank is portrayed as the person everyone calls when things go wrong, and he usually shows up without hesitation.
Helps us goes without saying, but whatever happens, I want you to know that I'll always take care of your family.
But if you look closer, there's a side to Hank that is actually pretty hard to watch. He hides behind this tough guy personality, and he often uses it to push people around. Whether it's handing Walt a heavy gun just to watch him struggle with it,
looks like Keith Richards with a glass of warm milk.
or making fun of him every chance he gets.
Yeah, well, another personal Walt, but you wouldn't know a criminal if he was close enough to check you for a hernia.
It feels like Hank uses Walt as a prop to show everyone just how much tougher and macho he is. And this behavior isn't just something he does to Walt. If you pay attention, even his best friend and partner, Steve Gomez, gets this treatment.
I got you 20 bucks. It says he's a beaner.
Hank constantly uses offensive slurs against the guy that he trusts most, and it makes you wonder how much respect he actually has for anyone. But the problem is with this tough guy act is that it makes Hank pretty bad at actually being there for people. He tells Walt multiple times,
I'm pulling for you, man. I'm pulling for you.
But the second anyone tries to show real vulnerability, Hank just leaves the room or changes the subject as soon as things get uncomfortable.
I made mistakes, you know.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm gonna get a coffee. You want a coffee? I'm gonna have a cup of coffee.
This emotional distance is also why he can't handle his own trauma. When he starts having panic attacks after being in El Paso, he won't even consider getting professional help because he thinks therapy is for the weak and that his career would be over if anyone found out. And when he's left paralyzed after the shootout with the cousins, he's confined to a bed, unable to walk. It's a tragic situation and the show makes you want to feel bad for him. Marie does everything for him. She cooks, she cleans, she helps him with his physical needs, and there's all the rocks or mineral stuff. She tries to cheer him up, and Hank treats her like she means nothing. He's verbally abusive, constantly snapping at her, belittling her efforts, and acting like a child.
And I got your sugar back, and your chips, and I couldn't resist.
Ray, I said Cheetos, not Fritos.
And the draft's not for 2 months, so this is useless.
But Hank's divided perspective on the people around him is something that we rarely see with other characters. He views the world in black and white. There's the good guys, aka the DEA, and the bad guys, the drug dealers and meth heads of the world. He tries to justify this behavior to Walt Jr. by explaining how he views drug addicts and compares them to cockroaches.
Cockroach comes out from under a fridge. What do? I mean, don't think about it. Stomp him down.
And when Walt asks him a logical question about where he thinks these criminals come from, a normal person would maybe say they went through traumatic experiences and had to rely on substances, or talk about the environment they were raised in. But Hank, well, he doesn't really have an answer.
Buddy might as well be asking me about the roaches. All I know, there's a whole world of them out there.
But up until this point, we've been looking at a man who's loyal to his family, yet flawed in how he treats everyone else. He isn't exactly evil yet, but the foundation for his later obsession is definitely there. From his perspective, he's the hero, and everyone else is just someone to be mocked. But this attitude, it gets a lot more dangerous when he brings it into his job, where his lack of empathy starts to turn into something much worse. Obsession and breaking the line. As much as Hank talks about being a law and order guy, he has a very strange relationship with the law. He seems to believe that there's one set of rules for the people he calls bad guys, and a completely different set of rules for himself and the people he likes. This hypocrisy is where we really start to see the cracks in his character. Hank's entire career is built on the war on drugs, yet he treats the law like a suggestion when it's convenient for him. For example, he spends his days arresting people for selling illegal substances, but he's got no problem enjoying illegal Cuban cigars and even offers them to Walter.
These were illegal.
Yeah, well, sometimes forbidden fruit tastes the sweetest, doesn't it?
It's a small thing, but it shows his mindset as he thinks he's above the petty laws he uses to lock up other people. And when he explains to Walt Jr. what marijuana use eventually does, he kind of admits that he experimented with drugs like marijuana when he was younger.
The world's a messed up place, you know. Just this one time.
We don't get to hear the full story, but it's clear how this double standard has real, life-destroying consequences for the people that Hank targets. A perfect example is my man Hugo, the school janitor. Hugo is a kind, hard-working man who actually goes out of his way to help when Walt is sick.
We've never had a problem with Hugo. Never.
But Hank, he's convinced Hugo stole chemistry equipment from the school simply because he's someone who fits the profile. Yes, he does racially profile him. And when they find a tiny bit of weed in Hugo's car, Hank arrests him. He smiles while talking about Hugo losing his job and spending time in jail.
Oh, he's gonna lose his job, like he should. Probably spend a couple months in county, because it's not his first rap.
Completely ignoring the fact that he just ruined an innocent man's life over a substance he used to smoke himself. This double standard is even more obvious when it comes to his own wife. When Skylar Figures tells Hank that Marie stole the diamond tiara and is upset with her,
Marie is a shoplifter, Hank. That's right. That baby tiara she gave me at the shower, she stole it from Gertrude Zachary's.
Hank doesn't treat Marie like a criminal. He doesn't talk about cockroaches or stomping him down. Instead, he demands that Skylar show her understanding and support.
She's got this therapist, Dave, and Dave is really good. It's an ongoing process, Sky, and we have got to be understanding, you know? We gotta support the shit out of her.
He uses his power and his connections to make her legal problems go away. It's the kind of mercy he would never, ever give a stranger. We even see this lack of integrity in his own marriage. Hank cheated on Marie the night before their wedding, and when he talks about it later with Walt, he doesn't really seem to regret hurting her.
I was not looking for it, but I made a love connection. Mouth love.
He tries to rationalize it, and even makes comments about how beautiful the other woman, who is secretly a man, was. It shows that Hank's moral code is mostly just for show. As Breaking Bad goes on, Hank's obsession with catching Heisenberg, it starts to turn him exactly into what he claims to hate, someone who thinks they're above the law. One of the first times we see this attitude is when he's chasing a lead about the meth lab, and literally jumps over an RV, barging in on a random couple who are just sitting there in their underwear. But things, they get much more serious when he finally follows Jesse Pinkman to a local junkyard. He finally finds the RV he's been looking for, the mobile lab he believes will lead him straight to Heisenberg. At this point, Hank is so desperate to close the case that he completely forgets his training. He tries to force his way inside, without a warrant, ready to break the law just to catch a criminal. But he only stops because the junkyard owner is smart enough to stand his ground and remind Hank that the law actually exists.
This is a domicile, a residence, and thus protected by the Fourth Amendment from unlawful search and seizure.
If it weren't for good old Joe calling him out, Hank would have happily ignored the rules of his own job just to get his hands on Heisenberg. It shows that for Hank, catching the bad guy is more important than actually following the law. This gets even worse when he involves Walt in the Gus Fring investigation. Hank knows that planting a tracker requires a legal warrant, but he decides to bypass the law entirely and forces his brother-in-law to do his dirty work instead.
What I need for you to do, stick this on it. GPS tracker.
Now, as viewers, we know that Walt is actually a criminal who can handle himself, but we have to remember that Hank doesn't know that. From Hank's perspective, he's taking a weak civilian with cancer and forcing him to approach a man he suspects is a dangerous high-level kingpin. Think about how reckless that is. If Walt had been the simple, innocent teacher Hank thought he was, he could have easily been killed for touching that car. The only reason Walt survived that moment was because he was already working for Gus and was able to warn him. He does the same thing to Skyler later on. When he finally realizes Walt is Heisenberg, he meets Skyler in a diner. He doesn't act like a supportive family member and instead tries to pressure her into a confession right then and there without a lawyer.
I need your help. They start bringing in lawyers and they start putting up roadblocks where they don't need to be, and my ability to control this situation diminishes.
You know, Saul Goodman is shaking his head somewhere. He lies to her face, telling her that talking to him immediately is in her best interest when he's really just trying to build a case as fast as possible. By this stage, the line between Hank and the criminals he's chasing has almost disappeared. And this obsession doesn't just stop at bending the rules. It starts to rot his character from the inside out. When his hunt for Heisenberg becomes more important than his own morals, Hank begins to cross lines that you can't come back from and start showing a level of cruelty that is simply impossible to ignore. But before we talk about how far Hank goes after his obsession with catching the one and only Heisenberg, we need to take a look at some of the things he's done that were pretty questionable to say the least. Pure evil Hank. Y'all, Hank is in his evil girl era. This is the part of Hank's story where it becomes very hard to keep calling him a hero. While his obsession with Heisenberg definitely pushed him over the edge, the truth is that Hank showed signs of being a monster long before that. There's multiple scenes throughout the show where we see a man who often lacks basic human empathy for anyone he considers a criminal. Dehumanization, treating people like animals. Even in the early parts of the show, the way Hank talks about people is genuinely disturbing. Instead of seeing addicts as people who need help, he sees them as someone inferior to him and constantly calls them names like
Meth heads. Nasty, skeevy meth heads who'd sell their grandma's coochie for a hit. Oh, you think that's funny? Yeah. That's funny, huh? Yeah. Let me tell you something. Every last one of these miserable wastes of skin.
The most famous example of this is when he takes Walt Jr. to see Wendy, a woman struggling with addiction. Hank isn't trying to be a positive influence or help his nephew learn a lesson. Instead, he humiliates Wendy for a laugh. He treats her like an animal, making her show her teeth and mocking her life while he laughs with his nephew.
Show us your teeth, huh? Come on, Wendy, let's see those pearly whites.
Y'all, that is a terrifying way for a police officer to think, because when you stop seeing people as humans, it becomes very easy to justify doing terrible things to them. We see the result of this mindset when he finds the body of Gonzo, who was just trying to give his friend a proper burial at a junkyard. Gonzo died a gruesome death after being crushed by a stack of cars, and instead of being professional, Hank treats the scene like a joke.
Hey, someone call Jay Leno. You got the world's dumbest criminal. Hey, get a photo of me with this guy, right? I'll stump you here. Make sure you get the stump in there.
He calls it poetic justice and has Gomez take a photo of him posing next to the corpse. He even makes sure the camera captures the severed arm stump in the frame so he can send the photo to Walt as a cool souvenir. Treating a human life ending as a trophy shows that even before Heisenberg existed, Hank already had the mindset of a man who thought some lives simply don't matter. Unchecked violence. But when Hank feels like he's losing control, he turns to violence and uses his power as a cop to take his personal frustrations out on other people. Think about the scene at the bar. After the trauma of killing Tuco and seeing a horrific bombing in El Paso, he starts having secret panic attacks. Instead of getting proper help, he goes looking for a fight to prove he's still a real man. Before walking into the bar, Hank purposefully leaves his gun in the car since he wants to hurt someone with his bare hands. Inside, he finds two men in the middle of a drug deal, and after having a panic attack in the bathroom, Hank decides to use their crime as an excuse to release his rage. Hank smashes one man's head against the bar and leaves both of them bloody on the floor. Then he flashes his badge to the crowd like he's the hero of the story. He only kept his job after this because Gomez helped him hide what actually happened in the official report. But the most terrifying display of his rage is what he does to Jesse Pinkman. When Hank has Jesse and Walt cornered in their RV, Walt realizes they need a distraction to escape. He calls up Saul, who has Francesca, his secretary, call Hank's cell phone. Francesca pretends to be a nurse and tells Hank that Marie is in critical condition after a horrific car accident.
Sorry to inform you that your wife's been in an automobile accident. She's being airlifted to Los Ranchos Medical Center and should be arriving there shortly.
To his credit, Hank does drop everything and rushes to the hospital in a panic, only to find out the whole thing was a lie. But since he's already dealing with trauma and stress from his job, this trick, it causes him to completely snap. Instead of calling for backup or following the law, he drives straight to Jesse's house and repeatedly punches Jesse until he's unconscious. He only stops when he sees the damage he has done, leaving Jesse hospitalized with a broken face, internal injuries, and his eyes swollen shut. The ultimate betrayal and the final price. So, as the show moves towards the end, Hank's obsession with catching Walt finally swallows up whatever was left of his good side. This leads to the most evil thing he ever does, using Jesse as bait. He tells Gomez that he doesn't really care if Walt kills Jesse during their meeting. In fact, he says that if Jesse dies, they'll at least get the murder on camera.
He's right. Pinkman gets killed. We get it all on tape.
This is a man who's supposed to protect and serve, who is perfectly happy to let a man be murdered if it helps him win. And guys, this leads us to the ultimate price of his obsession. He decides to run a rogue operation, using a fake photo of a buried money barrel to trick Walter into thinking his life savings are gone. The plan works, and a panicked, greedy Walt leads them straight to the coordinates of the desert. However, since Hank's plan is completely unauthorized and illegal, he's got no backup here. He never calls for reinforcements, and the DEA has no idea where he is. By choosing to be the lone hero who catches Heisenberg his own way, Hank walks himself and Steve Gomez into a death trap. When Jack's gang shows up with heavy machine guns, Hank and Gomez are left outgunned and totally alone.
We'll give ourselves up and show us some badges. Simple as that.
In the end, Hank's ego cost him everything. His refusal to follow protocol got his best friend killed and leaves his wife a widow. He was so focused on stomping the cockroach that he managed to destroy his own life while doing it. Conclusion. So, after looking at all of that, it's easy to see why somebody would call Hank a villain. He's a bully, he's violent, and his obsession eventually destroyed everything he cared about. But there's one thing that separates him from the actual criminals in the show. Unlike Walt, he's capable of admitting when he has crossed the line. After he brutally beats down Jesse, he doesn't hide behind his badge or lie to save his career. He walks into the DEA, confesses to the assault, and hands over his gun, accepting that his actions have consequences. Even at the very end, Hank stayed true to himself. While Walt was begging and offering millions of dollars to the men who just killed Gomez, Hank, he refused to play along and chose to go out with his dignity intact.
You're the smartest guy I ever met. And you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago.
So, what do you think? Was Hank a hero who simply got lost in a dark world, or was he really a bad person who just happened to have a badge? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and watch our awesome videos on the right side here. Yep, right side. Let me point an arrow at it so you don't miss. But anyway, thanks for watching, commenting, have a really good one, and bye-bye!